Tuesday in the Word.
Amen.
We are in Daniel chapter 3. We're going to continue in the vein of what I preached on Sunday. I preached on Sunday, the title was called Stand On It. And basically what that means is stay true, don't waver, don't just talk about it. May your actions line up with your conversation, with what you're stating, right? And then Sunday I did use the illustration for those who know him, and that is Little Baby. And it was a little funny because I have some younger people. I don't know what you call them, Gen X. What age group is the Gen X?
Gen X. Needy, what are you?
I would say I have some people in the congregation also between the ages of 21 and 30, about 30. And I know they know something about some Little Baby. I know about Little Baby because my daughter is a huge fan of Little Baby. And as I talked about it on Sunday, let me hand you this meeting. As I talked about it on Sunday, we were talking about how Little Baby has a song called Stand On It. And basically what he says, if I just make it a condensed version of it, he basically says that whatever he says, he does. And basically what he's saying is if he says one thing, he doesn't do another thing. He does exactly what he says he's going to do. And so Sunday, when I preached this, we talked about the three Hebrew boys that we find in Daniel chapter 3. I'm sorry, did I give the text? Daniel chapter 3. Thank you. Daniel chapter 3. Oh, this moves. It almost took me out. And we see here that in this narrative highlights the life of, or the situation that the three Hebrew boys by the name of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego find themselves in. To give some context to this narrative here in chapter 3, what has happened is, let's go back. Israel, remember when Moses led them, he didn't lead them into the promised land. He died before they actually crossed. So actually, let's just be real. He was not permitted to go into the promised land. He was not able to move forward because of his disobedience. And so the baton was passed to Joshua. Joshua carried the children of Israel into the promised land. And so prior to them going into the promised land when Moses was still alive, he gave them, in Deuteronomy, he gave them basically some marching orders or some wisdom in what to do and what not to do when they got into the promised land. And basically, if I may condense that, there were some rules that God had in place in order for them to be able to maintain being in that promised land, in that blessed space. And one of the rules was they could not worship other gods. Okay? And there were some other things, and basically God was just basically saying, there's these rules, you're going to abide by them. As long as you abide by the rules, we're good. But if you start breaking any of these rules that I have established here, then you're going to lose. Basically, you're not going to be able to maintain. So how many of us know that we can benefit from God's blessing, but it is up to us to maintain those blessings in the way that pleases God, right? Because you can get something, but he can also take it away. Hence, King Saul, you can be put in a position, King Saul, but it can be stripped from you when you be disobedient. And so here in the text, let me go back. So they went, Israel, they were in the promised land. They was living their best life. And what did they do? They basically forgot about God. They started doing all kinds of things that was not pleasing to God. And after so many warnings, when he had sent his prophets to warn them to turn back to him and turned from their wicked ways, they ignored it, and eventually God socked it to them. They were invaded by this man called Nebuchadnezzar out of Babylon, and he has taken some people captive. And actually, in this portion of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel were part of that first wave. There was 3 waves of captivity. You know, there was 3. He invaded Israel 3 different times, but this was the first portion of people that came. He took like the elite and the real, what we call the people who of value. Okay, and so Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego ended up in the king's court because he wanted people to serve him that, number one, you had to look good. You couldn't be ugly. And he wanted people that were very smart. And so he had gotten them, brought them into his service, but they had to go through some preparation. And the first part of the preparation was, as we see in the beginning of Daniel, is he wanted them to be trained, but he also, in their language, but he also allotted them portions of food from his table, from the king's table. And although it doesn't specifically say exactly what the food was, it's enough for us to understand that Daniel did not want to defile himself with the king's food from the king's table. And so he asked if him and his 3 friends could eat something, if they could eat what they normally eat and reject what the king was serving. And it was granted. That was granted. And so that was one thing that they faced. They didn't want to defile themselves with the food. And so, after that, the king had a dream, and he was not able to understand what the dream meant. And then with his magicians and all the people, the diviners and the enchanters, they wasn't able to interpret the dream, but Daniel understood that interpretation came from God, and so he petitioned God and asked God what the dream meant. But not only did he petition, he actually asked his friends to join in with him in prayer in order for God to reveal the king's dream, in order to interpret that dream, to reveal it and to interpret that dream. God granted that request. Daniel was able to interpret the king's dream, and when he interpreted the king's dream, the king promoted him to be over the province of Babylon. He put him in a really, really high position. But here's the thing. King had said, he didn't say anything about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because it was Daniel that came into his presence to interpret the dream. So he was promoting him. But what Daniel did, which is worthy for us to take notice of, is Daniel didn't just take his promotion and be like, yeah, that's cool. I'm out my collar. I'm big time now. I got me a big job. I'm gonna have a nice little income. Things is popping over here for me. No, guess what Daniel did? He went into the king and basically asked the king for a favor to basically hook up his 3 friends with jobs. And they got jobs too. Really good jobs. And so they were in some high, all 4 was in some high positions. And so, here's the thing. They're foreigners. Not only are they foreigners, they're captives. And now they're occupying other people's jobs. Sounds familiar in America, where we hear that all the time, where they're taking our jobs. These foreigners, these people are taking our jobs. And so here, these foreigners have been promoted to these high positions, and some of them have people that report to them. And so what has happened is, that was that. So everything's good. They're working, everything's cool. Well, one day, King Nebuchadnezzar decides to make or have made a golden image, a big giant golden image. And he wanted the image to be worship. Hold on, I didn't pray. Let's pause. Can't do this without the Holy Spirit. Dear God, we thank you once again for this opportunity. Lord, I just want to apologize for trying to start without you, because I recognize that the only reason I get to do what I do, and the only reason that I'm able to teach as I teach and preach as I preach, is because the power of the Holy Spirit. And so I want to repent and say sorry for that. And so, Lord, I just ask, as I ask every Tuesday, that is to open every eye, every ear to hear, every ear to hear, every heart to receive all that it is that you would have for us to receive. And dear God, I'll be so careful to give you all the honor, glory, and praise, because I recognize that it all belongs to you. And so, Lord, I ask, as we ask every Sunday and Tuesday, and that is to exceed our expectation in this time of sharing. And so, Lord, I ask, and we say, speak, Lord, for your servants are listening. All right, where was I? We can't do nothing without, I know I can't do nothing without the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Where did I stop?
The calf. He built the
golden calf, and what he wanted is he wanted everybody under his empire, because at the time he had conquered basically the whole world, basically, if you really kind of, well, I want to say he was the King of Kings. He was, what do they call the world power? The superpower of the world. And so he had this image constructed, and after he had it constructed, he called all of leadership in. And he basically told them, when the music starts playing, when you hear the lyre and the harps and all the things, when you hear all the pipes and everything, when the horns, when you hear all of this, everybody must bow down. Stop what they're doing, bow down and worship him. Everybody. He called in leadership because it was the leaders who would communicate to the people. He called in leadership and said, this is what I want done. But here's the consequence if people don't follow my decree. If you don't worship, you're going to get thrown into the fiery furnace. Period. Clear. So, here we are. So, one day, the music starts playing, right? But nobody doing the electric slide. Nobody was doing the wobble, none of that. The requirement was bow down. And so that was that. And then some Chaldeans they took notice of the three Hebrew boys, because the text doesn't say anything about Daniel in this portion. He might have been away somewhere conducting business. He might not have been present, or they might not have been paying attention. We don't know. The text doesn't tell us where Daniel was at the time, because it's just only highlighting the three Hebrew boys. And so worship is going on. Some Chaldeans took notice that the three Hebrew boys didn't worship, so guess what they did? Remember? Remember, these are three Hebrews that are foreigners who are in these high positions, who are over them.
They refused.
They went on to the king. Yep, they didn't even say yo king, because they started with, oh king, and all these pleasantries. And then they basically said, those Jews, the ones you put in the positions, the good positions, when your music played, your decree was that everybody would worship the golden image. But these Jews, these ones that you put into office, then the name comes. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't do it. But notice what they led with. Let's go to it. Let's look at verse 12. But there are some certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. But look what they did. They first said, they could have just went in and said, O king, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't honor your decree. No, they said, them Jews. You ever heard that? Oh, those African Americans, those Mexicans, those Hispanics, those Caucasians, those Indians. Why do people always have to lead with the race? Why? I am African American, but my name is Kelly. And the king would have got the point with you just using my name. And see, you got to be careful of some of those little slick undertones that people bring to the table, because you didn't have to mention Jew. Why did you mention Jew? Did you mention Jew because you have a problem with the Jews? Because you have a problem because they're foreigners. Not only that, they said, them ones who you put, let's look at it again. What did he say? The ones you set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. So now they're talking about the position. So this, and most scholars believe that the Chaldeans, their intention for going to snitch was not because they cared so much about, disobeying the king. The belief is, most scholars believe that they were jealous. Those Jews who you set over the affairs of the province, then their name. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. King. They're not worshiping. And remember, the requirement was for everybody to worship the image. But notice they added something. They don't worship your gods, and they didn't worship your image. Okay? Prior to this, it didn't seem like Nebuchadnezzar had a problem with Daniel. He actually applauded Daniel's God and things like that. And so they really are trying to put it to them. You see what I'm saying? And so what this allows us to understand. So tonight, what I talked about is how, even though they were confronted, even though the decree went out that they were supposed to worship, even though the law was they were supposed to worship the image, and even though they were confronted, even though they were told on, they stood 10 toes down because they followed God, and they was not willing to compromise who they were, or they was not. Didn't want to compromise who they were or their religion. And so that's the angle that I came from on Sunday. And the question that I posed to the congregation on Sunday is, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were true followers of God. They didn't want to break any of God's laws. They understood that one of God's laws was to not worship any idols. And so for us, we're Christians. And the question becomes for us is, are we standing 10 toes down when we are in situations where compromise is on the table? Oh, I wanted to go in another direction. Hopefully I'll get there, because I want to talk about the reaction of when you stand 10 toes down, reactions from other people. And maybe we'll hit on that. If not, we'll pick it up next week maybe. But are we willing, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, a law went out. It was law. And the consequence was death. But even though the law went out and they understood the consequence, when everybody else was bowing, they stood on it. I'm a follower of God. I'm not breaking God's law. I don't care who said it. I might lose my life. I still can't bend. But not only that, Nebuchadnezzar was their employer. And there's times where we might be in a job setting where there's some compromise on the table. Maybe they want you to switch some things, some numbers around, and you know that that's wrong. And you know that that goes against your Christian beliefs. Are you going to stand 10 toes down? Are you going to stand on to what you believe and who you are as a Christian? Or are you going, well, I guess I can do it this time. You know, I need my job. And don't forget, they had some good jobs. They were high in some positions. They refused. They refused. But not only that, the king, when news got back to the king, when the tattletales told it, the king was furious. And he called them in. And when he confronted them, he said, is it true that you are not worshiping the golden image? And then he goes on to say, well, he says, is it true? But then he says, but basically, I'm going to give you another chance. I was like, what is that? Now, you know, I hear it bang, I'm running. But then he follows it up with and says, basically, but if I play the music again, basically you have another chance and you can do it, you can get it right this time. You get another chance to obey. And so they basically said, we don't even really need to even answer you in this matter. And if I may put it in these terms, basically what they're saying, there's no reason for us to even answer you because there's no compromise here. There's nothing to talk about. And so when they said that, when he tried to give them another chance to comply, they wouldn't comply. We know something about some complying, right? They wouldn't comply. And so guess what? He got so mad that he told the people, turn that furnace up 7 times hotter than normal. He got the strongest men of his military, and he said, tie them up and throw them in the furnace. Look at all the times that they stood on it. The decree, the original decree, that's pressure. They didn't fold. Then when they was confronted and questioned by their employer and their leader, the world leader, the one that is over everything, the one that has the power to sentence them to death, not fold. Try to give them another chance, not folding. Then he says, turn the heat up hotter than normal, 7 times hotter. Still didn't fold. Now I would have been shaking, still didn't fold. Got the strongest men in there. Tie him up. Even while getting tied up, still didn't fold. So the question is, my question is, how far are you willing to go for Christ? Sometimes, maybe it's not a job setting, but where have you compromised your Christian values? Has it been at a family reunion? Are you one way at the family reunion and you show up another way at church? Are you one way on vacation, but you're different at church? Are you one way in front of this set of friends, but you a different way when you show up at church? Are you one way on Friday night and Saturday night, but you totally different on Sunday morning? Where have you compromised your Christian values? Where have we compromised? Where we saying, oh, you know what? I'll dabble in this just a little bit and I'll repent. And so, we see here that they stood on it in the face of death. They faced a lot of things, right? But what I really wanted to talk about tonight was look at the reaction to them honoring God. Look at the reaction of different people. Before they went in front of Nebuchadnezzar, it was the the Chaldeans. They didn't like the fact. Now, most scholars believe that them going to the king and making the accusations against him was driven by jealousy, but also they became bothered when they decided to honor their own God. So much so that it gave three people, or the Chaldeans, ammunition against them. They're bothered. Oh, foreigners over here working in these highfalutin positions, and they ain't gonna honor our king. They're not gonna do it our way, how we do it over here in Babylon. Don't bring your foreign stuff over here. Don't bring your foreign stuff over here in the United States. Keep that foreign stuff over there. You're in America now. You're not in Mexico right now. You're not in Africa. You're not in Canada. You're in America. We do things over here. Don't talk that kind of language over here. We speak English over here in America. Don't bring that Spanish over here. Don't bring that French over here. This is America. Don't bring it over here. And so they told those foreigners, those Jews, the ones who you put in these positions, they're not honoring our system, our way. Them refusing to comply. The very thing. Now they were law-abiding up until that point. They were honoring the laws of the land. But when it came to dishonoring God, that's when they had to put their foot down. That's when you have to stand 10 toes down. I'm not doing that. And so that bothers people. So then not only that, once they tell, and the one who established the degree finds out, he's on fire mad. Look at his reaction. So there's going to be some people who are not going to like the fact that you will not compromise to their will. Maybe it might not be an employer. Maybe it might be a friend of yours. Maybe they want you, oh, come on, go out with us. You can do this. Ain't nothing wrong with that. That ain't what that. People, they don't do that no more. You can do that. And then when you decide, you know what, I don't want to go, I'm not going out no more. I'm done partying. I'm really trying to live my life according to the will and purpose that God has set before me. And first thing oh, it's holier than thou. Oh, she holy now. She too good, or he too good, or he. No. People have these reactions because you decide to live righteously. Questions? I'm sorry, I've just been moving through this text. Questions? Comments? And so the king, let's look at it. It says, verse 13, furious with rage, that's his response to it. Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so not only is he furious, now he wants to confront him. All because they didn't want to compromise who they were. They didn't want to compromise their values. They didn't want to compromise. They didn't want to compromise who they were with regards to their relationship with God. And so now he confronts them. And then not only is he confronting them, he's questioning them. Is it true? Is it true? And like I had stated on Sunday, there was another person who I'm reminded of who was questioned also, and they compromised. Peter. When Jesus had been betrayed and he was headed to the cross, but before cross, he had to go from in the judgment halls and all the accusations and all that. And so when he was asked, are you one of him? Are you his disciple? No. No, I ain't. But the three Hebrew boys, when he said, is it true? They stood in theirs. But Peter didn't. One time, one of the gospel writers said at one time he ended up cussing. He was so mad. And sometimes, But remember, Jesus had already told Peter that he was going to do that. And he said, you will deny me 3 times before the cock crows in that morning. And he did. So they're not the only ones that was questioned. Peter was questioned too, but he caved. Peter compromised. But here's the thing, I want to come back to Peter because we never want to leave people. No, I'm going to go on with Peter. The thing about Peter is, because you might be one, because I have been one, that has compromised in ways, especially for friends or family, because you don't want nobody to feel a way about you, because again, the king felt a way. He was in his feelings about it. And there's times in our lives where we're not going to want to compromise who we are, Christian values and who we are, and people are going to feel a way. But eventually, they'll get over it. But with Peter messed up. Peter, no, when he heard that cock crow, he understood he messed up. But here's the thing. When Jesus was resurrected, and when he had met with the disciples after his resurrection, Peter wasn't he wasn't with them. And Jesus says, go get him, go get Peter. He didn't say, go get Judas. He said, go get Peter, the one who denied him 3 times, the one who compromised 3 times. And guess what? He told him, upon this rock I'm going to build my church. Peter was remorseful. He was repentful about it. There's going to be times where we mess up. But God will accept us back. He don't just throw us away.
Yeah.
That's where that grace comes in. Now, grace is something that is there for us to help and assist us when we fall, like when we have them little mishaps. It's not there for us to abuse. And just like I talked about the grace, like I abused Sprint and Nextel's grace period for years. My bill was due on like the 3rd or the 5th or something. But they gave you a grace period till the 15th. Guess when I would pay? The 15th. No, the bill was due on the 5th. The grace period was there if something happened where maybe my check was, something like a mishap happens. But it was not there for me to abuse. I was abusing. Every time I made that payment on the 15th, I was abusing grace. So my question tonight is, are we abusing grace? Righteousness is due on the 5th. But here you come with your little self, with your little payment on the 15th. And sometimes it's a partial payment. Knowing good well you had the whole payment, but you took it to the mall, the rest of it to the mall. Because you knew, they'll accept the partial payment. Well, if you got all of it paid. And so many of us, it's just like I was doing with Nextel. That's how long ago. That's how long I've been with Sprint, because it was Nextel, then it turned to Sprint, now it's T-Mobile. But yeah, it's due on the 5th. But abuse says, I'm going to pay you on the 15th. No, baby, it was due on the 5th. And so, thank God that Jesus, that grace is there. But we should stop. Are you an abuser? Maybe I'll preach that one day. Are you an abuser? And so, he was in his feelings. He felt away. Because they chose not to compromise. They chose not to comply with what he wanted, what his will is. And sometimes that's what happens with some people that we interact with. Because we won't comply with their will, what they want, they feel away. It doesn't necessarily have to be with our Christian values. It could be anything. Because you won't do what I asked you to do, I'm in my feelings. I feel away. And I'm going to do something about it. I'm that mad at you. He was so mad at them that he said, a regular fire, if we think about it, a regular fire, if you throw somebody in the fire, they're going to burn up. So you saying, I want it not hotter than normal. You said 7 times hot. That means you is super, super pissed off. You're mad. only that, I want you tied up. I think when you throw me in there, it's not gonna take long to burn me up. But now you want me. It's like you going. Oh, it's like overkill. Like I really want to do you in. So that's how sometimes people get in their feelings to the point to where they want to destroy you. You ever had that happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
Where somebody wants to destroy, or maybe we've been that one.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody doesn't want to do it our way or comply the way we want to do things, we flying off the handle. We mad as I don't know what. Yep. Especially if our kids don't comply. We throwing pots and pans and all kinds of shoes and everything. I done had to duck a few things. And I'm sure my kids done had to duck. And because the thing about it is whatever our will, we are so our will driven that we don't even like to budge on it. But no, they're in their feelings. Let somebody not want to do something that you want to do. Flying off the handle, and then afterwards you be like, oh my God, I didn't even really have to go that far. Questions? Comments? All right, and so he's in his feelings. I want it turned up. Even when the heat was turned up, they still was like, mm-mm. They didn't say, well, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think I'll take you up on it. Mm-mm. No. And so not only that, the men came and got him. And here's the thing that's interesting is, and I haven't gotten the answer to this yet, when they carried, the men that carried them up there to throw them in, they got burnt up.
I saw that. It was so
The
hot.
heat was so
That
hot.
should have been enough for
Uh-huh.
Nebuchadnezzar to rethink this thing. Because if Monica, if you're taking me, I don't think I'm behind you. You're taking me to the fire. That means you're carrying. If you're bound, you gotta carry me or get me there. How is it that the fire done bypassed me and tow you up? But not only there's pros and cons to them standing 10 toes down, not compromising. The cons is people getting mad, people jealous, people snitching, people doing all kinds of things, right? And so we're going to get to the pro in a minute. And so here they are. They got thrown into the fire. And then Nebuchadnezzar is looking, because it said that he jumped up in amazement. So that meant you didn't send them to the fire and you gonna watch. I might have got mad at somebody before, and sometimes you be so fighting mad, but I don't think that I can watch their destruction. Send them to the furnace, turn it up 7 times, and I'm gonna sit and watch. I want to watch you burn. That's some hatred stuff in your heart to want to see somebody, and immediately when you get fire on you, I don't think you burn like instantaneous. I think it's a suffering that probably is attached to that, right? I would think. I mean, I've gotten burned by a stove and stuff. You don't, like when you hit the stove, it doesn't, well, I don't know. I've never been in the fire, so I don't want to speak on it, but I would think that when the flames first hit you, when I watch movies, it doesn't look like a person dies in that second. It might take a few seconds or a couple of minutes before they actually die. But you just sitting there watching that. You watching somebody getting tortured. That's crazy. But anyway, he jumped up in amazement and he was like, wait a minute, didn't y'all put 3? Let's look at it. Oh, wait. Before we get to the fire, look at verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. Let's park for a second, and then we'll get back to the fire. His attitude, it was one thing that he was in his feelings. He was furious and mad, just rageful, right? how we know that he was that pissed is because he wanted the heat turned up 7 times hotter, not 1 time, I mean 7 really, and he wanted them bound too. But here it talks about his attitude change towards them, because there's been times, me and my cousin sisters, we get into it, but we don't hate each other. We might need a 5-minute or a 24-hour, and we good. One of us is going to get into, when the Three Musketeers travels, one of us is going to get into it, but our next group, we ain't getting into it. We going to claim it. We have like a little spiel and we good, right? And it stays with us, right? And so, never to the point to where we never want to deal with each other again, ever. In the moment, you might feel like it because you so mad, you want to put them up. But never have I never wanted to deal with them. Never did I want to write them off, ever. Why are you laughing, Mom? Because you know how we do. And so, here it says, his attitude. Only because his attitude changed towards them because they did not want to comply to his will. They did not want to do what he was asking them to do. And his attitude changed towards them. Again, this is a response to them not compromising who they were in God. We need to be careful of people whose attitude changes towards us because we want to live right, and we want to be holy, and we want to live sanctified. Was they even our friend from the start? If your whole attitude out of one incident, these people have been a huge help to him. Because if it wasn't for them praying with Daniel for the interpretation of his dream that we find in the earlier chapters, remember that's how they ended up getting the jobs. Favor. So at one time, he favored them. At one time, they were on his good side. He liked them, right? He enjoyed them. But now, one little incident, one situation, and you didn't turn on me for that? See how people do? So, back to the fire. They're in the fire. He jumps up. Didn't y'all put 3 of them in there? Why do I see? And they was like, yeah, we put 3 in there, but we see 4. And so then, okay, look where we at. Nebuchadnezzar, verse 24. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped. How we doing on time? Oh, I gotta hurry. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked the advisor, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? And they replied, certainly, your majesty. And he said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come on out. After you done did what you did. Come on out. Come on, come here. And so they come out, and all of, pretty much like the leadership, surrounded them, and they noticed that they wasn't burnt up. Let's look at it. Verse 27, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and they didn't smell fire on them. So then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to God, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then here's the pro. Here's the pro. Remember, there was all those cons. After they came out of the fire, basically not looking like what they've been through, they were promoted. Always, there's going to be times where people are going to respond to us in a negative way for us upholding our Christian values, for us walking up right. But then there's that benefit where we're going to get promoted, we'll be elevated. Right?
Yeah, that's good.
So aren't you glad that Christ was that example? Aren't you glad? Let me go ahead and aren't you glad that he stood on it? Aren't you glad that when he came here to die, Even though he struggled a little bit with it in the Garden of Gethsemane with the will of the Father to go to the cross. But once he came away that third time, he understood what his assignment was, and he stood on that thing, didn't he? I'm so glad that he stood. I'm so glad that he stood on it. Not only when he walked away from the Garden of Gethsemane, ready to do what he came to do, but I'm so glad that when they nailed him to the cross, he had the power to get up off of. They nailed him to the cross, and he stood on it. He stood there, and he bled, suffered, and died not only for me, but for everyone.
Yeah.
He stood on it. He didn't cave. He didn't waver. He stood on it. But not only did he bleed, suffer, and die, he was buried. But on the third day morning, he was resurrected, and he rose with all power in his hand. And guess what? He's still standing on it.
Yes.
And one day, he's coming back.